This is an autofiction from my new collection of memoir pieces, autofictions, and short stories, Remembering Richard and Other Tales of Unease, about the unease which lies just below the surface of life. The Longest Swim. Excerpt. The summer progressed. Sam's fringe grew back. He continued to go to the beach every day. But he was still no closer to Sharon or finding any way to impress her. Finally, one afternoon, as they were all lying around, torpid in the heat, Sam hit on a plan. The beach where they lay looked out on an island. It was the same triangular-shaped island, the two roughly symmetrical sides leading up from the base to a triple peak that dominated the view from any beach on that inner harbour. It was the first thing they saw when they arrived in the morning, the last thing they saw when they left at night. It had always been there and always would be. It was a gateway to their past, present, and future. Legend had it that people had swum to it from time to time, most probably with a boat beside them. It was a good long swim, across at least a mile of inner harbour water, with marker buoys for the yachts, and further out a deep channel where the big boats, the tankers, freighters, and ocean liners came in. Sam decided he would swim to the island. Surely Sharon Parsons would be impressed by that. The others were joking, laughing, and throwing sand over each other, irritating the people around them. Sam felt suddenly bored by them, by all of them, himself included, and the way they turned up at the beach and did the same thing every day. It was time to move on, to do something different. He felt like he'd had enough. He quietly left the group made his way down to the water. There was a gentle, low surf rolling into the beach. The water itself was quite warm. He felt no particular shock when he eased himself into it. He began to swim through the first line of bathers who were standing or paddling around trying to catch the extremely tame surf. A few other bathers, like him, preferred to swim further out. But those others soon stopped to rest, breathing hard and treading water, and he rapidly left them behind too. He was swimming in open water now, as far out as he'd ever been. Sometimes he and the other boys dared each other to swim out beyond the line of the other bathers as a way of asserting their superiority, their natural right of ownership to the beach. But he'd never before been this far out by himself. This was definitely scary. He had to forcefully remind himself he had a long way to go. The water was dark green around him. Small but regular waves surged past him, with white foam breaking from their crests. He rose and fell with each one, trying hard not to breathe the brackish water in. He was terrified of choking and losing control. He didn't like to think about how deep the water might be under him, or the fact that it was increasingly cold. His arms and legs looked very frail and white just under the surface. He swam to the first marker buoy, which was several hundred yards offshore, and clung to the buoy, panting. The shore was already fading with the distance. His friends were reduced to the size of ants, though he could still just make them out. He wondered if any of them missed him, or if they were at all concerned he was swimming so far out on his own. But no one stirred on shore. Out here there was only him and the task he'd set himself to do. He swam on. He was swimming more slowly now, pacing himself. He tried to swim a bit of freestyle, a bit of breaststroke, a bit of side stroke in turn to save his energy. His progress slowed, but he made it to the second buoy. An occasional yacht or launch would pass him by, and the people on board gaped to see a young boy so far out from shore. He was sure they wanted to pick him up or tell him to go back, but in the event, they left him alone. Everyone on the beach had shrunk to dot size. He could no longer distinguish his friends. The island, by contrast, looked much closer. He could make out individual trees on its slopes. He swam on. There were many more yachts and launches now. From each one, faces would look down, surprised, incredulous, or alarmed. He began to worry that something, particularly a launch with a vicious-looking outboard on the back, would run into him, knocking him out or chopping him into little pieces. How would he cope when he came to the main shipping lane, he wondered. Already the big ships he could see from there looked enormous, not the bathtub toys they resembled from the beach. When they hooted, they nearly blasted him out of the water. He was terrified. He began to reconsider his decision to swim the whole way across to the island. Maybe he'd proved his point. Maybe he'd come far enough. It wasn't so much that he was tired. He still had plenty of energy thanks to the way he'd been swimming, but he needed to know he had enough for the whole of the return swim. Halfway back wouldn't be good enough. That thought, combined with the complicated calculations about the threats posed by yachts, launches, and swimming into the shipping lane, proved too much for him to handle. He turned around.